Hello, my name is Matthew Tim, and this is my final project TED Talk on a topic that we discussed throughout this class over the duration of the year. The topic that I've chosen is psychology of a winner. There's a reason that I chose this because as someone who is trying to work in sports in the future, it's always important to understand what makes athletes successful, what makes coaches successful, what makes organizations successful. And throughout the course of this semester, obviously, we deal with the mind of an athlete, discovering what motivates them, what helps them in times of stress, things like that. But we really discover overall that sports, even though we're taught from a young age, seems to be mostly talent-based and physical fitness and exercise. Really, it's mostly a mental aspect. Now, obviously, fitness is a key component towards sports. You won't be able to compete if you're not physically fit. But if you don't have the right mindset, then you won't be able to compete and have success, which is the key. Now, we watched a video documentary discussing the psychology of a winner. In that video, there were 5 crucial keys to the mindset of a winner. Now, this was really applied to almost anything in life. You could be talking about the mindset of a winner at work, at home, in relationships, in friendships, and in sport, obviously. But I want to focus more on how these 5 key components would affect an athlete and how athletes face these every day. Because again, as I said, sports is an incredibly mental situation. It's not just based on the physicality, but it has so much to do with mentality. First, before I get into the 5 key components, I want to give you a little quote about something that I read from Dr. Chris Stankovich back in a 2018 article he had written. He studies athletes and physical fitness, and he said, when I press them, as in his athletes, to give me a percentage of how much of sports is mental, he said their answers are always over 50% and sometimes as high as 90%. This tells you that athletes recognize that so much goes into a sport, that it's all up here as well as in your body. All right, so the 5 crucial keys that were discussed in this video. The first was overcoming frustration. Obviously, we all have frustration, and that is part of having the mindset of a winner. But for an athlete, overcoming frustration is something that you will face on the daily. Your practices may not go smoothly. You may have teammates you don't get along with. Your coaches may have disagreements with you, and your seasons may not go as well as you want. But you have to be able to overcome these things in order to be a successful athlete, to win, to achieve championships. The second was managing rejection. We all get rejected in life many times, but as an athlete, it's so much more. Maybe your teammates don't like you. It fills in with number 1. Maybe your coach rejects you. Maybe you try out for a sports team and you're cut. But are you going to give up? Or are you going to be like Michael Jordan, who was cut from his high school team and didn't give up? He had the psychology of a winner, and he pressed on, and he made history as a Hall of Fame NBA player. Overcome complacency. In sports, I feel that it's so easy to become a complacent athlete. You go through the same exercise regimens. You go through the same training plans. You go through the same game day routines. It's so easy to get stuck in the mode of, the same old 9 to 5 job type of thing. But when athletes overcome complacency, they change things up. When they get injured, they switch their training routines. When they are not performing to the level that they should, they change their training. They change their practices. When things aren't going well with their teammates, they change the relationship within the room because they're driven to do it. Fourth is overcoming failure. Sports is no exception to this. And if you know anything about sports, you know this. I believe it to be true with sports. If you're not in first, you are in last, regardless of the standings. There's only going to be one champion at the end of the season, and everybody else goes home. So there's going to be failure, but there's not only going to be team failure, there's going to be personal failure. Maybe you don't play to the way that you want. Maybe you don't practice to the way that you want. Maybe you set goals for yourself as an athlete. You wanted to score 30 times this year. You wanted to have 50 points this season. You wanted to set new PRs, but you didn't achieve those. Overcoming those failures is what separates people from the winners and the losers in athletics, because they have that personal drive, that edge to get back up, keep going, and keep on working. And lastly, the last thing I'll cover was leveraging pressure. In sports, I feel that this is a huge piece, especially today with social media, especially for pro athletes and college athletes. You're constantly in the spotlight. There's always people asking questions about what went wrong, what went right, what do you feel is working, what's not working. There's so much pressure from the outside as an athlete, because this is something that you're doing for other people's entertainment, and when you're not doing well, they're not entertained. They'll be frustrated, so it falls on you ultimately. But as an athlete, you have to handle that pressure. You cannot crumble under it. You can't fold in and not just give answers and let the pressure from the outside eat away at you, because if you do, you let that emotion overcome you, and you can't focus on practice, you can't focus on games, you can't focus on winning and training. Though these 5 things that were talked about with the psychology of a winner in every situation, I feel applies to athletes 1,000,000%, and even more so than the average person, obviously. Sports is an anomaly in life, because yes, there's not a first and last when it comes to people in their lives, but athletics, there's a first and a last. And again, as I said, everybody who does not finish in first is in last place. There's only one championship, there's only one winner, and everyone else goes home. These 5 things apply to athletes every single day, and they go into everything else that we talked about this semester. Motivation, goal setting, imagery, overcoming injury. Everything in this class that was discussed is a part of the mentality and the psychology of being a successful and dominant athlete in sports. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this. This is something that I was really passionate about, and I know I went over the time frame a little bit, but again, I love talking about the mental side of sports. I feel that this is something that is becoming increasingly aware now in 2021 than it would have been in years like 2005, the 90s, 80s, because everybody wants to focus on the physicality and not the mentality. Thank you.